What's going on, everyone? It's been a minute. It's been a minute since I did one of these streams. I got my guest star. Come in and check out. Yeah, I had a much needed break, a little bit of a hiatus. Now I'm back. Today's just going to be a pretty chill stream, I think. I'm just going to be working on my personal website where I share blog posts and videos and whatnot. I got some new stuff planned for it. And so putting it on a new platform and making a few design changes. Nothing too crazy. But yeah, having an opportunity to redesign my site, because why not, you know? I feel like designers fall on like two ends of the spectrum. They're either constantly redesigning their website or they never want to design their website. I can alternate back and forth. But yeah, first day of fall, super chill. This coffee is harder to press than normal. I think I ground it too fine. We'll find out. There we go. Yeah, first day of fall. Doing just a cozy stream today. Just want to keep it like super chill. That's why I got the cozy chill sweater on. And yeah, I'm enjoying the change of weather. I know I've said it before, but AeroPresses are such an ingenious design. All right. While I'm designing my site and just kind of working on things on the stream, I had a couple of questions that I got in between the last stream and this one. So I figured I would address some of them first, talk about some of the questions that I've got from other designers and ways that I could help for various issues that have come up. So before I get into that, Design Fika is the name of the stream. Fika is the Swedish term to get coffee, or just coffee, and it's more about a chance to take a break and hang out with someone and just time to relax and take a step back from work before you jump in and wrap up for the end of the day. And so I really like that idea, and so this is my chance to kind of take a break, hang out, talk design, because I love talking about design. So yeah, that's what the stream is all about. No real agenda, just hanging out. So I've gotten a couple of questions since my last stream. The first one I got was around freelancing. Looking right here on my screen. And someone was asking specifically, what do they do to create a niche? Like, how specific do you go with freelancing? What have I done in terms of creating a niche in freelancing? And what are my thoughts on that? Especially because as of next month of October, I'll be full-time freelancing for 9 years, which is crazy to think about. Which is also crazy to think about that, like, I think the month after that, it'll be 16 years as a designer in total, which just makes me feel incredibly old. I should try to figure out the exact date of that, but yeah. So yeah, I got this question about freelancing and what you should do for a niche. And I think creating a niche is a really good thing. I think it is possible to go too specific for one. Just like creating a business around something that's too specific is also kind of a challenge as well. And so I think there's kind of a double-edged sword around getting really specific with a niche. Um, the more specific you can get, the clearer it is that people should hire you for that thing. So take, for example, I've done a couple of projects for cybersecurity. And so say I wanted to be the freelance designer who focuses on cybersecurity. That's really great. That's very specific. So if a company is in cybersecurity, they would really focus on, like, I would be more competitive than someone who is just a general UX UI designer. The problem with that is that you have to get in front of, and you have to have these companies in this space aware of your presence. That's mostly what marketing is for. And so the problem is that by creating a very small niche, you now have to spend more time and effort marketing for that niche, which is a challenge. And so if I was to market specifically for designing for cybersecurity, there's a limited amount of stuff that I can do for marketing. I mean, I could do a lot of networking. I think that would help. I could really own that niche, but that would mean I would invest a lot more time and effort trying to establish myself in that niche. The benefit is once I do that, then I'm just like that go-to person. But again, there's always a downside to that as well, is that if you are too close to competitors, like when you get into like a very specific thing, like, cybersecurity, then people won't want to hire you because you worked for a direct competitor, or you wouldn't be able to because of NDAs. And so I think there is a possibility of being too narrow. Now, if you go a little bit further out, what is cybersecurity? A lot of that is kind of considered falling into that wider category of B2B kind of enterprise applications. And so a lot of the things that I have seen solving problems for cybersecurity and for IT and security teams also applies to a lot of other kind of enterprise. When you start abstracting it a little bit, a lot of these problems start becoming very repetitive. And so a lot of the same problems that I saw in like healthcare, abstracted a little bit, also apply to cybersecurity, also apply to fintech. And so by going just a little bit out, I think finding a niche within product enterprise and marketing and kind of identifying yourself as a designer that focuses on enterprise applications is a really good focus and would land you a lot of business that you might not have considered. So for example, I got approached just recently for a big data analytics related to transportation. It's not a niche that I would have or an area that I would have never considered, but it's a super interesting opportunity and a super interesting product. And so by kind of finding my focus within enterprise and kind of solving those messy kind of enterprise B2B solutions, people start sending me that kind of work and identifying me as that kind of person who could solve those kinds of problems. So hopefully that's helpful for anyone who's kind of thinking about focusing on a very specific niche for freelancing. It's just like business in general. There's no one right way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I'm sure there's many people out there who'd be like, yeah, I got super crazy specific and you're wrong and whatnot. One that comes to mind is I know of a guy who focuses just on Shopify stores. And that's kind of a unique kind of niche because it's very, very specific, but at the same time, very broad because half of all e-commerce is running on Shopify on the internet. And so it's just it is very specific, but it is a very big market potential. And so versus cybersecurity, also very specific, but also there isn't as nearly as many opportunities for me to jump between different companies because just like in the design industry, people just kind of start rotating between companies and you start working with the same people. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it as a niche, but I could be wrong. That's just my take. So like I said, if you have any questions about freelancing or design, yeah, feel free to ask in the chat. I'd be happy to answer. Other than that, I'm just going to be filling my time. This is Basil. She's it's around her nap time, so she's just going to either hop up on the computer there or she's going to jump up on the chair behind me. Isn't that right? All right. There was another question that I got recently. It wasn't about freelancing. I'm gonna have to try to find it. How's everyone doing today? It's pretty chilly here in Denver. Okay, that's just rude. You're gonna have, if you keep acting up, you're gonna have to jump down. You can stay if you hang out up there, okay? Man, I'm gonna have to take a screenshot of this. This is like the lo-fi girl. It's just lo-fi designer. Oh, I remember. The other question I was getting was someone was asking about working with a team who is not really interested in UX, and kind of how to kind of spark interest for designers who are more focused on the UI side, and working within a team who's trying to make an effort to shift more towards user-focused design and really paying attention to user feedback within the product design process. This person was having a really tough time because they had a lot of designers who were more on the UI side, not really interested in UX, not interested in research at all, and what they could do to help inspire their team and get them interested in something like that. Beck, I saw your question. I'll get to that in just a second. I think that's a really great question. Yeah, so inspiring teams, that's been really interesting because for the last couple of years, I've kind of shifted more into that management role. And some of my projects have been more about like design management rather than being an individual contributor. And I think that question is kind of interesting because being on the management side, like you really think about things differently. And one of the things that I think is interesting is that people, well, let me start with kind of the, fundamental principle is that from a psychology standpoint, people do what they're incentivized to do. It's the core of psychology, it's core of economics as well. And it's also kind of being about a good manager as well. And so when you think about a design team, they're going to do what they're incentivized to do. And as a designer, if you're getting judged on your aesthetics as the measurement for how good of a designer you are, then of course you're not going to pay attention to UX. You're not going to pay attention to research. You're not going to be interested in any of that stuff because it doesn't impact you and what you're judged at, what you're judged on as a designer. And so the biggest thing, I'm not going to get into a super long answer, but I would say I think the answer lies within where is your team being judged? Like, where are their KPIs? Where are they focusing on? And how is their design being evaluated? One of the best things that ever happened to me as a designer is, if you've read Don't Make Me Think, when advocating for usability testing, they say that like you should take a particular part of your app and usability test it live and making designers watch their work being used by users. And that happened to me as a young designer, and it is an incredibly humbling experience the very first time that you think you've nailed it on a UI, and just to watch a user use it and seeing it just completely fall apart. Because, I thought it was hot shit. I thought I like nailed it on this particular one. I can't even remember what it was, but I just remember how I felt about it. And seeing it under usability testing and just watching like people struggle to use it really made me evaluate what I was being measured on as a designer. And so if you ever have UI designers or just product designers who are struggling connecting with, user goals, user research, things like that, sit them down and usability test. Usability, like show them video of their work being used by actual users. That really motivates and humbles people faster than anything else I could think of. Okay. Back. So your question. All right. What's an average hourly rate for medium UI UX designer in the USA? I think that really depends, whether you're, freelancing or salary. I think for medium right now, it's about 60 to 80 an hour is the last that I kind of evaluated, or the last that I saw. I would have to really dig into the numbers right now, just because I haven't been at that level. And for the longest time, I have swapped over to doing value-based pricing. So I don't do hourly. I'm not interested in doing hourly for a lot of projects. I would if the right opportunity, if I was like really excited about a potential project, but just for the most part, I do value-based pricing. I think it is a way more effective way for you to price your services as a designer. It makes your life easier. It makes, if you pitch it right, it actually makes a way better pitch than for those potential clients as well, because they're not signing up for, an unknown amount of hours for you to get things done. When you say, I'm going to do this for this price, you remove a lot of the risk for them to sign off on it. And it's a little bit of a challenge, like getting people to sign off on that, because everyone is really kind of thinks in this one track mind. But once you kind of understand the value and you're able to articulate that to potential clients, it is a much more effective way to do projects, in my opinion. Does that help? I know I took a while to answer it, so I don't know if you were even paying attention, because I was answering my other question in a long-winded fashion. But I highly recommend value-based pricing, because like nobody likes logging their hours. No one likes like starting a clock and figuring out how many hours you need to get this project done, and stopping it for different time, like stopping it to go to the bathroom or switching projects and like logging all of those hours. It takes up so many like brain cycles to keep track of that stuff, and that's better time that I can use my mind for solving design problems. And I feel like it doesn't incentivize me as a designer as well, because if I get really, really good at my craft, if I get really efficient, and I leverage a lot of great systems, then I still have to pitch the same same market rate as other designers. Say I'm a great designer, I charge, $150 an hour. Like that's what it's worth to me. Then you tell that to clients. Now you have to defend that. And that becomes like really challenging, because now you have to defend why you are better than an $80 an hour designer or a $50 an hour designer. Versus you do it value based and you say, hey, you're going to get this interface or this MVP or this feature for this price. for as many iterations for us to get it right, that's a very, very appealing pitch versus then it's $100 an hour and, I'll finish when I finish, which is very risky from a business perspective. And then I have to keep track of all that stuff. So yeah, it's a win-win. Oh, hey, Laura. How's it going? How do you develop a value? Like what kinds of tools? Yeah, that's a really great question. Yeah, so value-based pricing is really about establishing value up front. So when I work with a company and they're approaching me and they say, I need a designer and we're kind of looking for, help with our product, I'll spend the time up front to really understand what's the biggest thing that you want to move. Like, do you want to redesign part of your app? Do you want to, design a new feature? Do you want to design an app from the ground up? And then through those conversations, I try to understand the scope of the project. I try to understand like what kind of time frame they're looking for, what kind of quality they're looking for, what does done mean to them? And then I will do a price based off of that. So for example, I was working with a client to do an MVP for their project. They really want to do like a rough MVP to test first in the market. And so for something like that, based off of the scale and my experience with doing something like that, we could really do a testable MVP in about 3 months. And so I booked it up. I gave them an estimate based off of what it was worth to me to spend 3 months designing an MVP. And so it becomes less about like what they're willing to, trying to figure out how many hours you're going to spend on it. But it's like, okay, 3 months, what's worth 3 months of my time? And you're able to just charge according to that. So the challenge of this is that it takes some time, patience, and experience up front to scope a project. And sometimes they're just not able to articulate just exactly what they want. And so rather than going hours, I will go time box and say like, you're booking a month of my time at 50% capacity, or you're booking 3 months of my time at 25% capacity. And then that way I'm still not logging hours, but I'm still creating a time box. And it's basically like, you have my like full attention 50% of the time. So we could do like per days, or I can kind of subdivide those projects kind of based off of like what we're going to accomplish that week. That way I don't actually have to log my hours on a day-to-day basis, but I know like at the end of this 3 months, we're going to have X done. Or if they don't want to define anything, then just they get me for 3 months on a short-term project. And some clients really like that because they don't have the budget for hiring someone full-time, or they just have like a short-term need. And so just having someone kind of contract for 3 months is also really a really enticing offer as well. Does that help? Hi, Basil. Yeah, value-based pricing is a little tough, and it definitely kind of comes with experience, where there is a degree of like self-reflection, where you really have to think like, all right, how long would it take me to do something like that? And like how much effort as well. Certain things like you've done a bunch of times and you can roughly, like you have a good idea how long it's going to take. Other things you're like, I have no idea how long this is going to take, but let's go 3 months at a time. And by the way, that 3-month project where it was just like, I don't know what we're going to do. I had another project as well where it's like, they couldn't define it. So we just said, let's go 3 months. Let's see how far we can get with 3 months, and just go from there. So they just bought 50% of my time and effort for 3 months. And they were so happy with the result that they signed on for another 9. Yeah, 9 months. That was a really fun project too. How to deal with the ever-present I don't know client. Yeah, that's always a challenge, right? Because at our phase of a project, especially if you're a problem solver like UX, and you're working in that product space, it's very tricky working in the beginning because everything is so nebulous. Because right at that point, everything is kind of an idea. It's like someone's idea of like, here's a problem that we can solve, or here's an area that we kind of want to move into, or here's an audience I think that they might have problems that we can solve. And so everything is a little nebulous. And so something that I would recommend is that if you're a good strategist, if you're able to think about product strategy and how to kind of shape a project or a product in that early phase, then you can subdivide those into different kind of statements of work. So say I had a company, they're like, oh, we want to do something within the, I don't know. Let's okay, I just bought something off of eBay. They're like, we don't know if eBay is doing a great job. This like secondhand market, we think that there's opportunities there, but we don't know exactly what we want to make. And so the way that I would approach that is like, first, make sure that they have funding, because a lot of people have ideas and they'd have no way to pay for it. But if they did, and like they have funding, then I would break that up. The first one would be like, okay, let's do some market research. Let's do this first statement of work around kind of identifying what problems exist in this space, and figure out like what problems can we solve. So if I was to do something like in the secondhand market, I would try to shape some research around like, okay, what research can I do around that space? I would do user interviews with people who have just recently bought things off of eBay or OfferUp or Nextdoor or Craigslist. And I would see like, where were your pain points? Where were your shortcomings? Where were the areas that you didn't like? And I would also try to do interviews around like people who didn't use those spaces because like it didn't solve their problem, and figure out like where the gaps are, where the opportunities are in that space. And then do that as one statement of work. And then once you've identified opportunities, present it to them and say like, here are the opportunities that I think you could build a business around. And then phase 2 would be about solving that problem. I did the exact same thing with a startup where they wanted to solve a problem for the cybersecurity space. And so the whole beginning was talking to cybersecurity experts and really understand kind of in this niche of cybersecurity, what problems do you have? What problems within the current tool set are not doing well? What tools do you use? What tools do you wish you used? Do you feel like your job's really hard? And then I was able to list out all those opportunities. The startup picked one, and then that's became our MVP. And so that became like 2 different engagements. Because I feel like a lot of UX designers kind of sleep on this opportunity to be kind of like, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of overlap between product strategy as well, where we understand where there are needs within an existing product, but you can apply that same thing to competitors' products to see where there's opportunities for a competitor, for where you can improve a product to beat a competitor. So I feel like there's a huge opportunity for just kind of general product strategy and kind of a little bit more of go-to-market strategy when you're that early on in the in the decision-making process for product design. So this is probably a good time to say as well that I am working on a course for breaking into freelancing for product designers. Not necessarily specific to product designers, but just designers in general. Because I get a lot of questions about freelancing. A lot of people are interested in that. And when I look at the advice that's out there, there's a lot of stuff that's like very confusing. It's very contradictory. And also a lot of the advice relating to freelancers doesn't apply really well to designers. Because when I look at those resources like aimed at freelancers, they also include like hairstylists and photographers who like, there is some overlap, but there's also a ton of advice that just doesn't apply to our industry as designers. And so, yeah, I wanted to kind of get my feet wet a little bit with creating a course. And I was going to package up everything that I know about breaking into freelancing and doing a cohort-based class. So if you're interested in something like that, you can sign up for my newsletter, going to designsmarts.co, or follow me on Twitter. I'm going to announce on both of those places. But yeah, it's been something I've been working on for a little bit. Taking a hiatus gave me a really great chance to kind of recharge and really decide if I really wanted to do it, and I do. So yeah, that's something I'm going to do. I really enjoy teaching, and I really enjoy freelancing too, because it allows me to take a lot of vacations, or just not work as hard as other people, which I really enjoy. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a course about that. So stay tuned for more answers and more information about that. Yeah, see you later. I'm back. Yeah, the recording will be up, so you can check back on this. Answer is, do you have any take on how to create a unique UX process? That's a really great question. Yeah, when it comes to process, I've been told that I have a fairly unique process. And it wasn't because I was trying to create something unique. It was because I wanted to create the most efficient process possible. And so if you ever read anything by Bruce Lee or any of his kind of philosophy when it came to martial arts, he was a big proponent of learning from a bunch of different styles, taking the things that were effective and getting rid of everything that wasn't effective. And so that's where he created like this very unique style that was a combination of all of these things. And it was a very unique to him. And that stuck with me from like a very early age, in that it's like cast a wide net, learn about a lot of different things, and take the things that work and remove the things that don't. And so, for example, like I've never been a fan of personas. I don't think they're a very effective tool. I think they're very like kludgy and the biggest thing with personas is that people say like, oh, you're like, the reason why everyone says personas don't work is that nobody does them right. Like, how effective is a tool that nobody is able to use it right? Is that a very effective tool? And so I've been a big proponent of jobs to be done, and using the jobs to be done framework and jobs to be done theory for a lot of my work. And so by learning more about that and testing on a few projects, I found out how powerful it is and how effective that is, and how it's more foolproof as well. And so I just adopted it in my process. And then over time, you kind of build out this process of like a very effective tool belt. This is something I often talk about with junior designers, is that like build a very effective tool belt. Like have a good toolbox of tools that you can pull. That way, when you have a particular problem, you have a tool that fits that problem. Say if you need to drive a nail into a wall, you could use your shoe or you could use the handle of a screwdriver, but you're much better off using a hammer. And so by having that in your tool bag, you're able to pull that out when the need arises. And so I would try out a bunch of different things. I did throughout my career. I tried out a bunch of different tools, and I have experience with them, and I'm able to like take the things that work and reject the things that don't. And so I would test things out, try them out on projects, go out on a limb, do like some guerrilla research, or use a tool on your own time to see if it works, present it, and if it doesn't work, either figure out how you could tweak it or toss it. You'll create a unique process that works for you. Yeah, hope that helps. Process is something I'm super interested in because I feel like a lot of the bad rap that we get as UX designers is because people fall in love with the process more than they fall in love with the results. Because so much of what we do is like the nature of what we do, so much gets tossed away. Like you do all this like research, you do all this synthesis, you create all of these artifacts, because like nothing we actually do is like makes it into the end product. It informs the end product, but it doesn't really my mock-up isn't the actual thing that someone uses. My mock-up informs developers who are coding that interface. And so when you fall in love with solving the problem and creating an effective process to create usable, delightful, effective applications and products, then you're less married to the actual process, and you're a lot more fluid in tossing things away when they don't fit or when they don't work, and being able to adopt other things that might work better. So much focus on, I'm going to move this over. I'm having a hard time seeing it all the way on that second monitor. So much focus on beauty products and influencers. I know, seriously. I really enjoy enterprise applications. I know I feel like I'm the minority with something like this, but like I really love creating tools. Like I feel like if I was going to define the style of designer I am, I really love being a tool craftsman rather than being like being an artist. So I don't know. I really like applications. I really like doing enterprise things because I love solving those messy problems. All right. So I think I'll answer some more questions as I'm kind of designing, but I think I'm going to jump into working on my site a little bit, since I think I'm out of questions. But if you have a question, yeah, feel free to hit me up. Let me know. For now, I'm going to open up Figma. Figma, you break my heart selling to Adobe. But yeah, I'm going to open up Figma. I'm going to work on my site a little bit. Feel free to answer or hit me up with any other questions about freelancing or product design. I love just talking about this stuff. That's the main reason why I created this live stream. So I'm redesigning my my website. I actually just recorded a video about this, but basically, if you know anything about me, you just Google my name. Probably find joshwayne.com. You'll also find designsmarts.co. And I kind of had them separate for a while because I convinced myself that, I wanted to keep them separate because I wanted to focus on my personal website as just me as a freelancer, and then Design Smarts is going to be this thing around like helping designers and, doing articles and videos about design and product design. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there really wasn't any point, because it's all just me. I'm the only one creating it. I'm not teaming up with anyone. And I was really kind of dividing my efforts for no reason. So yeah, I realized that a lot of it kind of came from this place of fear, because I didn't know whether my education stuff would work out. And so by creating a brand name, I kind of hide behind it. And so I did some personal work, some therapy and whatnot, and realized that I was kind of hiding behind that name. And so by merging everything back into my personal name, I can kind of focus my effort, and everything that I create is me. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing. Oh, great question. All right, Laura says, do you think that falling in love with the process is similar to what any artist goes through in falling fatally in love with their baby, or is this something different? Yeah, I mean, like, there is that saying, kill your darlings. I think it's a little bit different. I think for a long time, especially the old guard in design, we spent a lot of time kind of defending the legitimacy of UX design, because I was there when it was like a big part of our pitch was first like why you needed UX design before we could like actually sell you on it. And so now we're at a place where you don't really have to do that. And so I feel like a lot of people are still in that habit of like, it has to be a big, rigorous process. Otherwise, what are they paying for? And so I think there's a bit of that where we don't need to go into we don't have to have a robust process, because now everyone's kind of sold on that idea of like, yeah, experience matters. The design of an app matters. And so if you're doing all of these deliverables and this whole process where you could have done it in half the time, then people are starting to question, not like, do you need UX design, but like, why is this process taking like 6 months? Like, do you really need to do research for like a whole year? Like, they want to move fast. And so telling someone that they need to like validate a direction or validate with users before they build anything when they feel like they know a need is like selling snow to Eskimos. Like, there's no benefit to them. Like, when you talk to a product owner or a founder, they know that there's a need because there's a need that they have or that they've seen. For you to go in and pitch and like, hey, let's do a whole bunch of validation research to figure out whether you actually need it, they think you're wasting their time. And so I think there's a little bit of fear that we're not delivering on the value that we say that we provide if we're not doing all these steps. I have more thoughts on that, but I'm not going to rant on that for too much longer. This imposter syndrome in our industry is very, very interesting. There's a lot of interesting research that I'm digging into for upcoming article. But yeah, I think it's an interesting space. But enough of that. Let's talk while I'm working on my site. So I'm going to go over here. I'm actually going to move my camera real quick. Just give me 1 second. All right. I feel like I can like, it's like a 45-degree turn rather than a full like side profile is a little bit better. Okay, so I'm working on my site. Like I said, I'm merging together designsmarts.co and joshwayne.com to be a little bit more focused on what I'm doing now, which is, as you can see, writing articles, making videos, reviewing books, sharing some notes. So yeah, I wanted to create a little bit more flexible space where I could just kind of share all the different content that I'm making. So that's kind of the goal of this. So yeah, I'm kind of in a rough spot right now. I'm just kind of thinking through some things. So yeah, I'll just kind of do a think aloud kind of thing. Like I said, if you have questions, if you have things that you'd like me to talk about, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to be chilling. You could just hang out and watch me design for a little bit. I've always loved these process videos because you really get to feel like you're a fly on the wall with someone else working on things. And I've always felt like I've learned a lot from that. All right, so a little bit about where I'm at so far. I'm messing around with the homepage, and like I want to keep the same kind of like blob kind of style that I have on Design Smarts, a little bit more than I have on joshwayne.com, because that one's monochromatic, I believe, except for my links. I like doing my links in red. I have this particular red that I really like. So I brought that in. I'm still going with these kind of amorphous kind of blob looking things. I really like that as a style, so I'm gonna go with it, because yeah, when you're doing a personal site, you don't have to have a good reason. I just like it, you know. So yeah, so I'm kind of iterating on this. I saw this on Dribbble, and I really like this. That's eventually what I'm gonna end up doing, is like something like this. I actually had like the blobs that I'm doing before I found this, and then I happened to come across this and be like, oh snap, that head cutout looks really cool. I really want to do that. So I clipped that, I put it over here. I'm like, that's cool. Eventually I'm going to do this. I got to do, you know, obviously this is a photo before the facial hair. So I got to redo one with me with the new facial hair, and obviously like new glasses and whatnot. But I really liked doing that as a logo. I'm going to keep that. That's just kind of my vibe, even though it's like 3 frames ago. Mid-century modern. I love that you said that, because like if I could show you the rest of our house, my wife and I, we got so much like mid-century modern stuff. It's my vibe. I love it. Yeah, I feel like I really like the organic shapes. Like I really like that as a vibe. And so I'm just kind of like poking around with it. I don't know if I'm liking this background one as much. I feel like it's a little too much. I feel like I could add more things here, but yeah, I gotta redo the photo. So that's kind of acting as a placeholder right now. And then I got like a big call out for like the latest article. I'm kind of playing around with this idea of like, I create articles and I create videos, and they're kind of 2 different channels. And so kind of doing this as a merged content channel and kind of tagging them as like an article or a video, and just kind of calling them posts. So if like you've done information architecture, stuff like that, you merge different categories, you have to slightly abstract the category above it. And so that's kind of something that I'm kind of playing around with as an idea. And I found these cool blobs here, and so I'm like doing the cover photos is kind of like these blobs. There's going to be a little bit of movement when you hover over them to kind of like zoom out or kind of like increase like opacity, or reduce the overlay a little bit. I wish I can afford an Eames chair. I actually just there's a Herman Miller does this, like, you know, that famous coffee table with the glass top that is like super organic shape. I'm gonna have to find it, but like I found a piece of glass at like a yard sale like that, and they were asking like $10 for it. And so I'm like, oh my God, I have to get this. Because I also like doing woodworking. I know it's super cliche at this point of just like, what developer designer doesn't dream of the day that they can quit designing and just like go work in a little wood shop for the rest of their days. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. What is this called? Oh, Noguchi. Like I found a piece of glass. Look up Noguchi coffee table. Very expensive. Like I'm gonna spend $2,000 on a coffee table, but I found a piece that's organic like that shape, and I keep telling myself I'm gonna make wooden legs for it one day. Yeah, I have dreams of someday like coming across an Eames chair in like an estate sale, and someone being like, I don't know what it is, I'll take $100 for it. Like that's ever gonna happen. Yeah, so yeah, and this thing that people really like the book reviews that I do. This is just something that I've been doing for a long time, where I've gotten into this habit of I'll read a book, I'll do a lot of highlights, and then I'll take all those highlights and merge them into a file that I can reference later. And so I've just started publishing them after seeing this guy, Derek Sivers, do it. And I'm like, oh, damn, I've been doing this exact same thing. I just never published it. So I just started publishing them, all the books that I've read about design. And people really like them. So I'm keeping it going. So you could see over like down here, I've done the breakout for the book. I'm excited for like how I'm going to do this. I don't know exactly how I'm going to code this. But yeah, I'm excited about this one. Oh yeah, the Noguchi is crazy expensive, but I think I can make it. I think I can make it in a reasonable amount of time. I'm sure my wife would be laughing if she heard that right now. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm working with so far with the homepage. Lately, I've been messing around with different fonts. Right now, I think I got this. Oh, early Bitomator. Yeah. Big dreams. Value-based pricing. Create a design agency. Outsource all your work. And that's how you afford all the mid-century modern furniture that you could ever hope for. That's the dream. Yeah, so right now I'm kind of messing with fonts. Because right now I'm working with, I got TT Norms. It's okay. It's kind of generic. So I was kind of messing around with a couple of different fonts. I got this one over here. I'm gonna move this. Move my mic. Founders Grotesque. I'm kind of digging. It's got a little personality to it. It's not too much harder to read. I gotta up the line height on it, or the text size and the line height just a touch. But I'm really vibing on it. You code your own website? Yes, I do. I was before I was a designer, I was a developer, and I still code every once in a while. It's really good cross-discipline to have because it makes it a lot easier to translate your design to development work for the handoff. And it's also super helpful for calling BS on developers who say, like, that's not possible. When you know it's possible. Nothing shuts them down like being like, I could code that for you if you can't figure it out. I don't say it like that because that would be really, it'd make me sound like a jerk. But yeah, you're able to challenge them on some of these things. It's also just fun, you know, because when you're designing, Like when you're creating for the DOM, which is like for the web browser, it's just like fine arts, is that you really have to understand your medium. If you talk to like fine artists who work with like charcoal or watercolor, then you really learn that they're very aware of the limitations and the strengths of whatever medium that they're working with. The exact same thing applies when you're working with a web browser or we're working with mobile, is that there are strengths and weaknesses for the medium that you're designing for. And if you don't understand those strengths and weaknesses, then you might be trying to bend it into a shape that it might not work very well. And then that's when designers or developers start like hating the work that you've done. Yeah, so I'm messing around with Founder Grotesque, which I'm kind of leaning towards, but I also have this National, which is about the same X height as this one. It's a little bit more basic. Also a strong contender. And then I was also exploring this this Sewn font as well. But I feel like this stretched out, it's overplayed. It's really overplayed, I think. Yeah, like everyone does that now. Dropbox, the homepage and everything. Not really vibing on it as much. So I think I'm gonna end up going with Founder Grotesque. I'm really liking that. So to test it out, this is kind of the balance between being a UX designer, UI designer. Obviously, I had to test out its readability on a blog, because like it's got to be readable, you know. Especially if I'm writing longer articles the way that I do. So yeah. So this is something I'm kind of thinking about. So there's some interesting research, like conversion research done on articles that have images. And the reason why you always see blog posts with images now is that everyone's figured out is that images or media with blog posts are clicked on more often. And so that's why everyone does them. It's also kind of an opportunity to kind of like visually express the core concept of it, which I like as a designer. It's also kind of a challenge whenever you're designing a blog post for a client, because it now creates like work for them, because now they have to hunt down some kind of imagery, stock imagery. In some studies has actually shown like the reverse, is that like if you add an image to a blog post, it makes it more enticing to click on. But if you use really bad stock imagery, then it makes it less enticing than not using a photo. Super interesting. Yeah, for me, it's been like, this is obviously like a bad Photoshop because I didn't do this on this color. But yeah, I like being able to kind of like do these cover photos. But also stretching them across like big screens has always been a problem. So I'm trying out this like left-right layout, which I'm kind of liking. It gives it more space to do like these tags for like, you know, this post tags, and then I got my title, I got my red, and I can kind of do this left, right, and then when I go down to a narrower column, then those can obviously like stack vertically. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where I left off. Obviously, I got some layout stuff going on here. Oh, I think I adapted this. I was trying to figure out like my new line length. Yeah, because the letter width on this font was a little bit narrower, and so I was getting too long of a line length. I think that's where I left off. Ooh, good article about pictures versus illustrations. Post that in the chat. I'm super interested in that kind of stuff. I love collecting original research. I feel like there's far too many articles that they're just opinion. Be like, you should use images because I like images and they look good. Like I love finding like people who have done actual research on these things and have, sources for them. All right, so one of the tricks that I do for like line length, because what is it? You're supposed to do 55 characters, 55 to 85 is kind of the estimate. Left, right versus centered. This isn't really centered. I went like, you could see that this was a column. This was a narrower column, and then I did like a wider column. The images are centered. I'm trying to figure out this challenge. I remember this is where I left off, is like I was trying to design like a good grid for this that can make a little bit more sense, or at least with, because the problem with a lot of blog posts is they look super boxy, because for a readable line length, where it doesn't cause usability problems for reading, is actually pretty narrow. And so when you limit your images to that width, then your images end up being like super small. And sometimes like some of my images like got some detail to them, because I'm doing these like sketchy illustrations, something like this. There I have, like, even in this article, you just Google like this article, there's some more detail to it. And so I didn't want to limit images to that width, and so I wanted to figure out a better way to do that. So I'm kind of doing a couple of things. I'm adjusting this new line length to match this font, so that it's within kind of that no more than, I think, 80 characters per line is what I'm shooting for. But I also want the images to like be engaging as well, and not feel like they're too small and kind of crammed into a tiny box dictated by the text. Let's see. I'm gonna pull up. So one of the tricks that I do fairly often, good little hack for you. So I use this app, IA Writer. You can replicate this process in a bunch of different apps, but you can see down here at the bottom right hand corner, this might be really tiny on the stream. Let's see if I can. Nah, it doesn't change it. But basically what this says is like 0 characters. And so what I'll do is I will paste in here like the longest line that I see, and I can paste it in here, and now this changes, and you can see, I'll read it to you. It says 74 characters. So this is just kind of like, there are Figma plugins that do this, but this is kind of a hack that I do to make it like super simple. I just kind of paste this in there, and I'm able to like count the characters, because I'm shooting for somewhere between 55 and 85. 75 is a good number for like a readable line length. This is also, I believe 80 characters is the ADA 2.1 compliant as well. So not a lot of people know this, but line length is part of the accessibility like ADA guidelines. And if you're not paying attention to line length, you're out of ADA compliant. So there you go, fun fact. And also, like, I just want to make this readable, because the whole point of this is for people to read these articles, right? So yeah, this is where I left off. I did this like slightly wider because I changed this font, and now these lines felt like a little too narrow. Yeah, I feel like I was jumping a little too much with these lines, so I went like, I bumped it out like a little bit wider. So now I'm making some adjustments on that. So I'm kind of messing around with that for now. 672. Yep, that's IA Writer. You could also do it in any code editor as well. There's a lot of plugins for those kinds of things. But I use IA Writer just because it's kind of my scratch pad for thoughts, and it just has that feature built in. But you could do this with, I do it with VS Code a lot if I'm like on a work computer. So it's kind of a helpful way to do that. I think I did 672 for these. I went with these for quotes, and it's not super exciting as far as like a quote block. I might look at making that more exciting. I don't know. I'll have to look at how I use quotes, because sometimes some of the quotes that I do are like from articles and whatnot. Sometimes they're kind of longer. So maybe I can't do anything like too exciting for my quote blocks, but it just seems a little boring right now. Maybe I'll iterate on that a little bit later. So the reason why this is doing it this way is that this is a, I have this in a frame, and it's got auto layout to center align it here. And so that's why everything is kind of jumping out like that, because that's similar to how I would code this. I'm just going to jump in a lot of these things out. And then I want images to see if I could do like, go all the way to the ends of my grid, if it makes sense. So I think I'm going to max it out at that point. So let's see what this looks like. Did my music stop? All right, I'm going to zoom out to normal size, kind of get a feel for it. That feels a lot better. And just because my images will be of unknown width, like it's going to max out at this size, but it's going to like go to its native size if it's smaller. So because of that, I'm going to do the caption for them center aligned. I think that's the best way to go. Yeah, I didn't know about the relationship between line length and accessibility. I don't think it's about screen readers. I think it's about like, you know, when people think about accessibility, they always go to just like fully blind, but there's a whole spectrum of like partially blind and just like, I'm spacing on the term for it, but where you have like tunnel vision, and you can't see things in your periphery. But yeah, like any kind of like vision problems as well. Like when you think about it, like for people who have like tunnel vision, they're kind of focusing in one particular area, and then you're going to the end of the line length, and then your eyes have to make a coordinated jump from the end of this line to the next one. And so the longer that length, the harder it is to accurately make that jump without going like 2 lines or 3 lines, something like that. And so but like on the flip side of that, if it's too short, then you're jumping too often, and like you kind of lose a rhythm to it. For people who are like visually impaired, who like are forced to like make the screen sizes larger, or they have like that form of like tunnel vision. I apologize, I can't remember what it is. But it's even harder for them to make that visual jump from line to line. And so like even the kind of like editorial layouts that were super popular a few years ago, where like you would lay out blog posts, like you would hand align them um, per article. And like New York Times still does that occasionally. 538 does like really interesting articles on that. That could be really hard because if you think about it, like if I zoomed in the way that I like where the way some of these people read is that they're reading right here, and then suddenly from their perspective, they'll be reading, and then it'll like end. And then they have to like visually scan around to figure out like where does the article pick back up. And so it can be very difficult for them to like find where like the article picked back up. So yeah. So I believe the U.S. standards for accessibility guidelines. So like, let's see, WCAG, ADA 2.1 compliance line length. Let me see. Where is it? I'll try to find it. If someone else can in the chat knows of it, yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But yeah, basically, line length is part of accessibility. A lot of people don't pay attention to that, especially when they're doing like apps, and they're just doing like think about like dashboards. Dashboards are huge, huge problematic pieces for that because they will just like make everything responsive, including just like line lengths. And so they'll go like all the way across the screen, and they think, well, it's one paragraph, it's fine. Nope, you've violated ADA compliance for that. Yeah, so that's feeling a lot better for that. And I think I'm going to do tagging for some of these because I have a good amount. I want to write more about UI patterns. This seems to be the area that people really enjoy. But I also want to do more articles on like freelancing or kind of working independently. And so by breaking them out into like different tags and doing some tagging in categories, I can do that now. So that's like a new feature that I'm going to be doing as well. And then I think what I'm going to do is like the images, like you could see the image is already cropped here. I think I don't think I'm going to do it that way because I spent time on like making these images. So like I don't want them cropped. So I think what I'm going to do instead is do something like this. Oh, that's because there's a blend mode on that one. Okay. So let's do another one. Oh, the way I have this set up. Yeah, so the way that I'm going to program this is like I'm going to do an image or I'm going to do some kind of graphic on top of a background. And so what I want it to do is take the image and I want it to fit it within the space and then it fill in the like dead zone above and below with the background color. But the way that I have this set up, I can't exactly do that. It's not super important for me to do this correct right now. What I was trying to do was like eyedropper the main body, but I have this color acting as an overlay, and it's doing a color burn to change this to blue, because originally this this article, what did I do for the background? Here, I'm gonna undo some of these things. Fill would be the easiest way to go. I'm gonna see what's possible with my CMS. I'm gonna use Kajabi for this, so I might not be able to do what I want it to do in this situation, but we're gonna give it a shot. But what I want to do is, so I have this concept of, I have this color palette. Let's see, it might be in my components. No. So I have this, so I have this color palette here, this of colors that I created. And so I'm gonna rotate through them at random for different articles or different posts, because, you know, I like color and I want to do some cool, colorful things on this. And so you could see, like, I got this blue to purple. I got my yellow, my blue, and my orange in here. I got my red. That's kind of like my primary call to action color. Yeah, I feel like because I have the opportunity to do some cool colors as my brand, it's kind of like the brandless brand. You get to have more fun with things because you're, you know, a designer. Get away with stuff. You don't have to stick with brand guidelines. So yeah, that's what I'm doing for like all of these articles. So you could see here, like I have a rotation of these different things. So this one is orange, but this one might be yellow. This one might be blue or yellow or green or something like that. So let's see. Let's see if I want to do it this way. So I'm going to add this. I'm going to fit the image. Yeah, so this article originally was on yellow. So let's change this back. Let's get rid of this overlay. So for this, let's go. See, yeah, I definitely want to do something like that. So definitely fit it and fill the dead zone with that color. It's going to be a little tricky. There is some, so this is where you start getting into like having an understanding of development kind of helps me in this case, where I have to think like, okay, I have to now I have to have a field associated with a post that assigns it a post color. That way that background can be applied to this cover image. So if I don't have a field, or if my CMS doesn't provide the flexibility of a custom field, then that's not possible. And so this is something I'm just kind of like doing, like, I wish I could do this. Let's see if I could do it once I get into coding. I haven't really like tested it out yet, but yeah, it's something I'm gonna shoot for. Makes you feel better about the huge amount of time it feels on graphics. Yeah, totally. I feel that. Part of the reason why I do this stream is because I feel like people are self-conscious about how long it takes them. And if I don't have a deadline and I don't have like a client like breathing down my neck, or like, you know, reasonable deadlines that I need to stick to, then like, you know, I can take a little bit more time kind of fiddling with these things. I kind of like doing some fun things. I just I bookmarked a cool article about how to do some cool blob stuff I'm gonna test out. Here, I'm gonna show you. I also want to like show a little bit about like what this inspiration process looks like. You can see like bits and pieces of my inspiration. Like you could see that I clipped like this header that I saw. Like this guy has like this cool like breakout. I'm like, awesome, I want that. The other parts like of it, not a huge fan. I think these drop shadows are like super like far too heavy. The drop shadow on this, not really a huge fan. I kind of want to do a drop shadow inside. I think that would look cool. Possibly. I don't know. You can see over here, I was trying to mess around with like background noise patterns. They didn't work out. Not super well. Not easily. And then let me grab this other article. Let's see. Oh, this article. Let's see. Where's the original? I don't want Instapaper. Okay. I saw this recently. And I'm like, oh snap, I'm already doing blobs. What if I could do animated blobs to like merge into each other? This is specifically how to do it in Webflow, but if like Webflow is basically based off of just HTML and CSS with a GUI on top. So like once I kind of know this, I can kind of figure out the same kind of idea. So like without it being overwhelming, this can also cause another fun ADA thing. This can cause motion sickness. I know for a little while, people were like super interested in like slightly moving backgrounds. It can cause like vertigo and motion sickness. And so like this kind of stuff, big ADA no-no. You can actually make people sick with this kind of stuff. And so if you do it, it'd have to be like really subtle. What I would like to do is an idea of just like, I have a blob related to like an image or something like that. And then as you scroll down, it comes in contact with like some other blob that scrolls up, and then they kind of like glob together. I think that'd be a cool idea. I don't know if that like how feasible that is. That might just be like if I have time. See, like, look at that. Like, imagine if like on scroll, like these things like blob together. That'd be so cool. Yeah, I'll drop this in the chat for anyone who wants to see this. I know everything is like, it's kind of small. Is this a custom CMS? No, I've done custom CMSs before, or my current site is built off of Middleman, which I've been like just basically hand coded. Not gonna do that for the next one. I'm building it off of Kajabi. Kajabi? Kabaji? Yeah, I'm doing it off of Kajabi. That's it. Moving over to Kajabi because I want to get more into making courses. I really like teaching, but I've never made a course just because it's been busy with freelancing stuff, and I think it's time for me to try something else out. So kind of leveraging my love for teaching things. And for UX research. I dig that too. All right, so I think that's good for this. I kind of have some like open questions and things that kind of be flexible based off of the development, but I think that's in a pretty good spot. I'll kind of leave that as is. Book reviews, where did I leave off? So this is the other section that I was talking about, book reviews, that people really like this. And this is like a prime example of just like how line length can get too long and not be super accessible. Because the temptation here, especially if you're doing like something like a dashboard, a page like this, your first inclination would be like, easy. It's like, it's one paragraph. It's like 2 sentences, 3 sentences. You just do it like that, call it done, right? But this is very difficult to read. I mean, like, as someone who doesn't have any of those accessibility problems, it's a little tricky to read, and beyond like 3 lines, I'd be annoyed at having to read that. But for people who do have some kind of visual impairment, that's can be downright impossible to read. So, super easy way of doing that is to just do a CSS class to cap readable line lengths, and you just create a class that would be like, call it readable or something like that, and then it just sets it to whatever line length that you want to do. I do have to mess around with this page a little bit if I am going to use, what am I using now? Founders Grotesque. So let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I'm just gonna commit to using Founders. Like, I left all these different variations up for the last time that I was reading it, but like now that I've seen them, I'm just gonna go with Founders. It's a really nice font, and not a lot of people are using it, so I could be one of the cool kids to be the first one to use it. Not the first, but you know what I mean. All right, we're gonna use the font changer plugin, change from TT Norms to Founder Grotesque bold. From TT Norms to Founders. Yeah, I really like this plugin. It's called Fonts Changer. There's a lot of different like font switcher plugins out there. A lot of them suck. This one's not great, but it's better than most. Developing courses is interesting because you do usability research every time you train, no matter what you're teaching. True that. And that's also why this first course that I'm doing about freelancing, I'm doing as a cohort-based class, because just like any kind of good research or good learning, if you dig into the psychology of learning, shortening feedback loops is the best way to guarantee faster learning time. I have this great book up here on the switch to the camera. I have this. Talk about nerding out about research. Check out this. I have this book, The Cambridge Handbook of Expertise in Elite Performance. This is called a what's referred to as like some people call it a meta white paper. This is basically a all of the research that has been done about this topic, where they look at larger patterns and show like, here's what science has told us so far about this subject. So this is all about expertise, how people develop expertise, and how they develop expert performance, how elite performers perform. Very, very fascinating if you're interested in the psychology of learning. Yeah, love that. Founder Grotesque, yeah. It's Founders, grotesque. Where did I get this from? It's from the Klim Type Foundry. Posting it in chat. Yeah, I found this Type Foundry. I don't even know where. Recently, and I really liked a lot of stuff that they were offering. There's some cool stuff in there. Let me show you. Yeah, I was just like looking through their fonts, and I was testing out a few of them. That's what I'm going with right now, Founders. But I was also, in my other ones, I was like messing with National 2. That looks pretty nice too. I really like that one. Sewn. It was a little bit too like Swedish style, a little bit too clean for what I was going for. I wanted something with a little bit more personality to it. Tiempos, that's the one that like it's been super popular lately. A lot of people have been doing that, which is cool. Yeah, Founders is really nice. And let's see, I'm going with 22 now as body copy. See, that's the thing. Like, different fonts are readable at different sizes. Founders, I was going 18 pixels with TT norms because it's a very clean font. Like, I'll put them side by side so you can kind of see. I feel like this is something that designers don't always pay attention to, but like different fonts at the same size are not the same readability. These are both the same font size. And while this is extremely readable because it has a very good X height, it is a very clean font, very like very modern font, very like geometric sans. This one is a little bit more stylized. It has a shorter X height, longer or wider width. And so these two things are like completely different different readability at the same size. And so while I can get away with 18 pixels at TT norms for this one, to get to like the same readability, I have to go with something like, I think I went with 22 or 21. Yeah, so things like if you're a UX designer trying to get into UI design a little bit more, you really have to design some of these things based off of how readable your fonts are. You got to start with, with style and with font in order to kind of make some of these decisions. All right, so my readable line length now. Let's clean up some of this stuff. Let's send some of these things to the graveyard. So these articles, cut. I always keep a graveyard like tab or a graveyard file so that I could go back and like look at things, but not always like, I don't have to keep them right next to me all the time. Let's go to the graveyard. National, sewn. Good test, didn't work. This is just a copy of my original one, so we can go ahead and delete it. All right. My new line length is, for readable font, this is 672. Just happens to be that way when it breaks out on the grid. So we'll do that. I think I was going to do 22. Yeah, that is what you're thinking of. Kerning. Kerning is set by the type designer by default. There are overrides that you could do to it, but yeah, that's set with the font. So the two aspects that you're thinking about or you want to consider with fonts as they relate to usability is X height and also default kerning as well. And so depending on the style that you're thinking of, or like in the brand that you're working with, you might want to go with something that has a little bit more personality, but you have to make up for it by making adjustments. So for example, like I was just showing, I could get away with 18 pixels for TT norms, but to get a similar amount of readability, which is important for what I'm trying to do here on writing a blog, then I gotta bump it up to like 21, 22. I landed on 22, which is probably like a little too big. I don't know. But like, yeah, that's what it's coming out to be. And I do mess around with like letter spacing a little bit. You can see, or maybe you can't, for like good way to make headers look a little bit more like polished is to tighten them up as far as like the letter spacing. So you could see like this is at 0 and I like bump it to like a -1, sometimes like -2 depending on what it is. And so I'll kind of go into like a negative scale as the type headers get bigger. They go tighter for their letter spacing. It just gives it a nice look to it. And then let's see, all this stuff. Yeah, I'll just go with 22 here. Obviously got to increase this padding though. Why do I have no spacing on this? Oh, I know why. So another part about font design is that line height is baked into it as well. And so they're not always super well configured, in my opinion. And so one way that I've aligned things to get like a good like visual alignment is rather than doing padding on the top and bottom of text is to set the line height of the text to whatever I want the size of something like this to be. So for like this pill, if I want this pill to be 40 pixels, then you can see that I could do my line height for the text to be 40 pixels. And then usually, depending on for most fonts, it would give me my most accurate visual alignment. Not the case for this, unfortunately. So I think I have to try to do this the old-fashioned way, or the other way that people do this. Let me see. Where's my frame? That looks a little bit better, actually. Let's go 18. Yeah, 18. I was told to never destroy earlier versions of my work in my UX bootcamp. Yeah, that's just a really good habit to get into, because I can't tell you. Let me go back to the camera. I can't tell you how many times that I've been working on a product and I've been iterating through different versions, especially with like some of these bigger clients where like they have to visually see something to kind of understand it. And to go through a bunch of iterations just to be like, hey, I know we're on iteration like 32, but we actually have to go back to like version 2. And it's super annoying to like try to, one, remember what it was that was, and then two, if you don't have it to recreate it, it's a lot easier to do basically what I have here. So I'm going to go back into Figma. I just do these side-by-side iterations of things. So you could see like the home page here. You can see kind of like the various iterations. And you can even see like this earlier version. I really like this, but just with the direction that I'm going right now, this is an idea that I'm not going to be able to execute right now. And so I want to keep it, but I don't want to iterate away from it. Or I don't want to like lose it when I go through all my iterations. So you could see like this idea of like the pop out. I tried doing it with the entire image, didn't really work. I realized I have to cut out the background. Doing it without the background, I did some color variations on here, and you just have them all here, just kind of laid out. You could see like all these different iterations with like navigation and background and layout. It's good to have these things. One, because you can look back and be like, oh man, look how awful these early designs were. But then also so you could just like grab older versions, because like sometimes there's aspects of a design that were good in like an overall concept that was bad, and then you can take them and kind of revive them in a new version. That's why that was looking weird. It's because I was setting text line height to 0. Yeah, I think this might be because I'm doing a tester font. So Clin or Kern or whatever this brand, this Type Foundry was, they allowed you to download test fonts that like don't have all of the symbols. Like there's no, there's certain characters that are missing in the test font. So visual like alignment and line height for the font might come with the actual font versus the test one. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Just know that like visually this has got to be aligned. And the cool thing about me being the developer on this is that it doesn't have to be exact. I can fiddle around with that, when I get to it, because I'm handing it off to myself. But that also goes as a good general rule. The more sophisticated and more like design focused. I'm not going to say sophisticated, like the more like UX, like sophisticated. Let me walk that back. The more the design knowledge a development team has, the less you have to make your things precise, and more of it you can rely on your developers to help with like making design decisions. Because unless you have a perfect knowledge of the development environment, which you never do, there's always going to be some degree of change that has to happen to be like the most efficient with how you spend your time in the development phase. So yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this kind of stuff. But I'm going to bump up these font sizes. I could go 18 here. What's my line height here? I think I could do 18 for these like smaller ones. Might have to do some additional letter spacing on these. I think we could leave this as 18. Let's see. Is that going to feel too small? And talking about iterations as well, let me show you what this looks like on the current site to show you kind of like where it came from. Because like I started off like really basic here. Like I went with the serif here, but this is exactly what I'm talking about, like a really boring layout. Like I wanted to keep it easy for me to develop, and just like I didn't even know if this is going to work, whether people would like these book reviews. So I kept it really simple. I just did one column, and I did, you know, left and right with this typical media block kind of design. And yeah, people really like this. It gets like a decent amount of traffic. And so I wanted to iterate on this. And so this is basically like, here's where I started, and here's where I'm going. So I wanted to do something that was a little bit more like, the feeling that I wanted to get was when you're browsing someone's bookshelf, and like you see the sides of books, like you see the spines, or sometimes you see like, you know, the covers of them, and you're intrigued to pick them up. And so we stack them, you know, on their side for like space reasons, but in a digital space, I can replicate this kind of feeling of I've laid out all the books that I've read on top of a desktop, and you're kind of walking by them. And so I wanted to create something that was a little bit more visual appealing, something that is a little bit more engaging, and something that intrigues you to go and look at the notes on these. So I did this in a couple of different ways. So what I did here, let me like grab one of them to show you. So this is like a fun little thing. There's a handful of things going on here. One, I got the cover, which is just an image. And so then I'm creating a drop shadow, which is giving this like 3D look. So you see that? So I believe I could do this with a CSS filter. We'll see. What I'm basically going to do is I'm going to replicate the image and repeat it in the back and desaturate it to bring down the, or like not desaturate it. Well, I will desaturate a little bit, but also bring down its opacity to like 20%. And so then this gives it this like book cover look. And then there's also a stacked drop shadow as well for this. There's a series of drop shadows this book drop shadow, you can look at the adjustments. You could see how many drop shadows I have in here to give it a realistic looking look. There's a lot of great tools out there to do like realistic drop shadows. I believe there's actually one here in Figma. Let's see. So we'll do something like this. We'll just create a red block, or we'll create a black box. And then you can go drop shadows, beautiful shadows. This is a cool plugin. So check out this. So this is your light source, and you could do distance. I don't even know how well this is showing up on stream, so I apologize if I'm just talking nonsense. But this is your distance of a light source. This is the strength of the light source. You could do a harsh shadow or like a very diffused shadow. And then you could do the angle as well. So yeah, cool little trick for creating like very realistic looking ones. The problem with this is that it burns through graphics. Like it's more work for a graphics card to render like, what is it, like 8 drop shadows to make that look good versus like the 1. And like drop shadows are very graphics card intensive. So if I was doing this as part of like a much larger page, I don't know if it would be a good idea. But you know, this is where you get to have a little bit more fun with this kind of stuff. Yeah, you could see it on this white one the best. Like that looks really good. That looks really good. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. So, yeah. Yeah, so I'm kind of messing around with some of these things. This is kind of where the limitations of Figma is something where like I'm not going to fake what I know it's going to be, but basically I'm doing this as a grid and I'm aligning the bottom of the books because like just like books on a bookshelf, gravity pulls them down, and they're not all the same height, and so they're misaligned on the top. And so I felt like that looked a lot more natural. I thought that looked a lot more natural and more of like, because I'm going for a very skeuomorphic style. This is where I'm kind of blending, like I'm trying to bring back skeuomorphism just a tiny bit. I know flat design seems to be here to stay, at least for, you know, for what we're looking at right now, but I want to bring back just a tiny bit of skeuomorphism just in my own project, just because it's fun. And this font size is far too small for what I'm trying to do. So let's go in here. Let's bump this up a little bit. Because I think I got, 18 for these, but I got 12 for that. I think I might go 16. Yeah, so this is kind of one of the limitations of Figma, is that I can do, like in CSS, I can use the grid CSS in order to get what I'm going for right here. But I'm limited to Flexbox within Figma. And so this is where I would like try to communicate this concept if I was handing it off to developers. But because I'm designing it myself, I know that I'm going for this idea of like align the books at the bottom, consistent gaps between the bottom of the copy and the top of the next book, do it as a grid. And so that's where I'm able to do it. In fact, this is even what I'm going for here with this like drop shadow. I can accomplish this a little easier in code versus what I'm trying to do here in Figma, just because I'm limited by the tool. I could spend a lot of time trying to like fake it. But for what? I know what I'm going for, so I'm not going to waste my time with that. Something that I am kind of Yeah, that is. That's what I'm going for, because like you could see on the red book, because when you think about like a hardback book, where's my camera? You look at like a hardback book, you're looking at it like this, right? The front cover is going to be the same color as the inside of the back cover. And so that's what I'm trying to replicate here in this like digital space. And I don't know how, again, I might be limited with the CMS, but that's essentially what I'm going for here is like, because this is a little further away and because it's kind of like, it has less light on it, it's a little bit darker, it's a little bit more faded. So that's why you got that red back there versus like something like this, the inner cover would be white for that one. Where it gets tricky is something like the cover of Talking to Humans, where it's white and then red. I assume it would probably be white, but I'm trying to replicate exactly that on the inside. So we'll see. We'll see what we can accomplish there. I think this is also a good kind of lesson in picking your battles as a designer. It's like once you kind of understand some of the coding limitations, something that seems like a simple ask from you as a designer might be a significant lift as a developer. And so by understanding the medium a little bit better, you're not wasting a developer's time on something like, you know, for example, if I did the work of like this, the inner cover of this follows this line of like the top half is white and the bottom half is orange. And I could do that. And then I could tell my developers that like, you have to do it this way because I designed it this way. That could be like a 6-hour ask. That might be like them trying to create some additional fields in the database in order to replicate something like that. It's additional fields in the CMS. And it's like, yes, it's a nice little detail, but is that worth like potentially thousands of dollars of dev time in order to make that? Not really. And so there's give and take with the medium. It's just like, all right, yeah, I won't get too far into it. I'm trying to get better about stopping myself with my long rants because it's boring. All right. That's looking pretty good. I think I'm just gonna kind of leave that. I could do this as a drop down, as a sort by. I know that's a very common pattern, but I have the space. And if you read my article on drop downs, you know that I'm not a huge fan of them. And so because I have the space and I have the option, I'm going to make this into kind of this pill selection toggle thing rather than a drop down. All right, so that's what I'm thinking for that. My next challenge is I'm thinking about iterating on these reviews because I'm doing them out of a rating of 10. But I'm trying to think about the best way to do that because really the problem I'm trying to solve for is what books are worth reading and what books are not. And I guess that's a relative question as well because for example, if you know a lot about information architecture, reading How to Make Sense of Any Mess wouldn't be a good recommendation because you already know about information architecture, and that's an intro guide to information architecture. Talking to Humans about research, if you're not really interested in doing research right now, then that's also not a good recommendation. And so it's really dependent on what are you trying to learn. And so maybe maybe there's a degree of like organizing this by what do you want to learn, and maybe there's like different shelves. So this is where I'm like a little less disciplined. If this was with a client, then I would kind of do that work up front to really establish like, okay, what is the goal of this? What are users trying to do? Might do research on that to kind of inform this. It's a little bit more fluid as my own kind of design. And so it's something I'm kind of interested in, kind of exploring without kind of having a more informed decision. Might be something I need to reflect on a little bit more rather than trying to explore it kind of in this medium of Figma. Because rating things out of a scale of 1 to 10 is useful to a degree, but then also like if someone was looking for a good recommendation on they want to do strategy a little bit better, or they want to get better at presenting, that's a little bit different of an ask. So I don't know. I think that's a little bit of homework for me. The stream has been going for 2 hours. I think that's a good stopping point. It's probably my longest stream so far. But yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up right there. So thank you everyone who joined me. Yeah, I hope it was fun. I hope you learned something. If not, I hope it was relaxing and it was a good chance to kind of chill out. So I try to do this every week. So feel free to, I believe if you subscribe on YouTube, then it will let you know when someone's live. You can also just follow me on Twitter because I post about it there. That's where I'm stopping for today. Hope you have a good rest of your day and a good weekend as well. Talk to you later.